Hey guys, it's Keith here with iTech Keith Productions, and today we're going to be reviewing the all-new Apple iPad mini with Retina Display. Now there's a plethora of aspects they're going to be discussing about in this review. As a result, I decided to use a whole new structure to organize this review, starting from the exterior of the iPad mini to its real-world performance. Each aspect is going to contain the facts, the pros and cons, and our opinion of it. And to conclude, we'll be wrapping up this review with our perspectives of the iPad mini. So click the section of the review you're interested in, or sit back, relax, and enjoy the complete review. Starting us off is the exterior. Of this aspect, there are various subtopics which includes the materials of the iPad mini, the size, the design, and finally, the display. The back of the iPad mini is made out of pure aluminum, while the front of the iPad mini consists of the panel and glass. As a result, the iPad mini feels extremely good in the hands. From the smoothness of the aluminum back to the sturdiness of the build, it is almost the best tablet out there when it comes to material quality. However, using aluminum has its drawbacks. Firstly, when playing intense games such as Infinity Blade 3, the iPad mini can get really hot and may cause slight discomfort in the hand. However, the back could also get really cold in certain situations, especially during the winter season. If the temperature of the back is really important to you, you may want to consider tablets with plastic backs such as those from Samsung. Now for many, the size of the iPad mini is just the perfect size for a tablet. However, many people also argue that it's just too small, and the iPad Air is a much better deal. Well, it all depends on personal opinion. There is no right or wrong answer. The iPad mini has a 7.9-inch screen, while the iPad Air has a 9.4-inch screen. Yes, the difference is not negligible. I personally believe that the iPad mini is the perfect size of a tablet, as I find myself using the iPad mini for browsing the web, catching up with tweets, and replying to emails. As a result, having a bigger screen will not be beneficial to these tasks and will only make using the iPad a lot less comfortable to hold for long periods of time. I actually picked up the iPad mini to perform this task and use my MacBook Pro because of the level of comfort it provides. That being said, I do not miss the larger screen when watching movies, but it's not a factor that convinces me to purchase the iPad Air over the iPad mini. The iPad mini is also slightly heavier than last year's model, but it's really not noticeable from normal use. In terms of design, Apple has kept the same design from last year's model, which includes the aluminum back, the chamfered edges, etc. Taking a look on the sides, the left hand side contains the volume rockers and the mute switch or rotation lock, while the right hand side contains nothing. The bottom contains the speakers and the lightning port, and the top contains the sleep wake button. Yes, I gotta say, the speakers on the iPad mini has been improved. They're louder and the basses are deeper. However, they are still placed in a position where in landscape mode, my hands will most likely cover the speaker and thus affecting the sound quality. The back contains the camera, which I will explain in more detail later, dual microphones, and in this case, as this is a Wi-Fi only model, it does not have the cellular antenna compared to the cellular models. Finally, the front contains the home button that does not have the fingerprint sensor in the iPhone 5s, and the gorgeous Retina Display. The Retina Display is hands down one of the best displays on the tablet market to date. It features a 2048 by 1536 resolution at 326 ppi, which is pixels per inch, which is almost 4 times as many pixels than a last year's iPad mini. Therefore, text looks extremely crisp, photos and videos are incredibly detailed, and the pixels are so densely packed together that it is almost impossible to discern any pixels with the naked eye from regular viewing distance. However, there have been many reports around the internet that describe the display having color inaccuracies, as the reds have been represented in lighter and more saturated reds compared to the iPad Air. Personally, the average consumer such as myself, the difference is negligible, and the accuracies are not as great to the extent where the iPad mini is displaying the reds as pinks. However, if you're looking to edit photos on the iPad mini, this is something to take in consideration. The exterior of the iPad mini is bar none one of the best exteriors to date. The materials used feel extremely great in the hands, the size is perfect for one-handed use and daily tasks such as browsing the web, the display is incredible to look at for long periods of time, and because of this, you may even choose the iPad mini over your computer for various things. However, the exterior does have its limitations such as the aluminum back getting too hot or too cold in various situations, the larger screen of the iPad Air being a much better option for watching movies, and the color inaccuracies which in my opinion only hinders the overall quality of the exterior to some extent. Unless you're a designer that needs the color representations to be as perfect as it can be. The lack of a fingerprint sensor may also be a major drawback to those of you who own an iPhone 5s because of the fragmentation between choosing the slide to unlock or to place your finger on the home button. That being said, if you own an iPhone 5 or below, the iPad mini is a great companion. Next up, we have the camera. The iPad mini Retina Display features a 1.2 megapixel FaceTime HD camera on the front that shoots at 720p video and 30 frames per second, which works great for FaceTime and Skype calls. However, the iPad mini also contains a 5 megapixel rear-facing camera that shoots full 1080p video at 30 frames per second. The quality of the pictures taken with this iPad is nowhere close to the quality of the pictures you can take with the iPhone 5s. That being said, however, it's still one of the best cameras out there on 70-inch A tablets. The rear-facing camera also features backside illumination, which should improve taking pictures in low light. However, it does not feature a flash or dual flash like on the iPhone 5s or iPhone 5, therefore low light performance is definitely not one of the iPad mini's strong points. With all this in mind, the iPad mini with Retina Display is a great option for people who want to make Skype or FaceTime calls using the front-facing camera. However, if you're looking for a tablet to take really high-quality photos with the rear-facing camera that can match up with a DSLR, then you should definitely stop watching this review right now. I mean it. In my personal opinion, don't even take photos with this iPad. Just don't. You look absolutely ridiculous. But what's powering all these features? Well, a third aspect is the internals. Now, this year's iPad mini Retina Display did not miss out on the latest and greatest technology that Apple could provide in terms of processing hardware. It comes with a dual-core A7 processor, which is also 64-bit like in the iPhone 5s and the iPad Air, the M7 Motion co-processor, 1GB of RAM, and at 16/32/64 and 828GB storage option, Bluetooth 4.0, dual-band Wi-Fi capabilities, and the optional LTE or cellular model. As a result, the iPad mini is now quite literally a smaller version of the iPad Air. I say quite literally because based on Geekbench, which is a widely known benchmarking application, the iPad mini is clocked at 1.2 GHz while the iPad Air is clocked at 1.4 GHz. Speculations have been roaming around the internet as to why Apple has done this with the same processor, but we believe that Apple did this to prevent the iPad mini from getting too hot after being able to keep almost the same weight and form factor and quadrupling the screen resolution compared to last year's model. However, most people are not going to be interested in all these numbers. They're only going to care about how it performs in daily usage, which leads us to our next aspect, real-world performance. In terms of gaming, the iPad mini's Retina Display is the beast of a machine. It handles games with no issues at all. For example, when I was playing one of the most graphically intense games in the App Store, Infinity Blade 3, the gameplay was utterly smooth, frame rates do not drop, and the Retina Display makes the game look so much more beautiful to look at. Even running multiple apps in the background, the 1GB of RAM really plays a big role in this, as I did not even notice a difference with the gameplay without any apps in the background. Speaking of multitasking capabilities, the iPad Air's Retina Display runs iOS 7 to the extent that it's usable, however feels sluggish at times. Animations are quite slow to respond and frame rates occasionally dropped. However, these are all software-based issues that Apple could fix in a future software update, for example iOS 7.1. Overall, iOS 7 on any iPad feels like an oversized iOS 7 for the iPhone. Elements such as the Notification Center and Spotlight feel like they were rushed and they were not designed to take full advantage of the iPad. That being said, however, the iOS keyboard on the iPad mini is an absolute joy to use. The size of the tablet is just right for my hands to reduce the number of typing errors I made with the full-size iPad 3. However, as it's not a full-size keyboard that can be found on the iPad Air, if you're a blogger, you may want to consider purchasing a full-size keyboard with this iPad mini to increase productivity. Speaking of productivity, iOS 7 of the iPad mini also comes with great built-in apps. They were not inclusive in iOS 6, which includes the full iWork suite, Pages, Numbers and Keynote, and the full iLife suite, GarageBand, iMovie, and iPhoto. That being said, using apps such as GarageBand and iMovie may affect battery life more than other apps. However, with their A7 processor, the iPad mini seems to be a much more efficient device. With daily uses such as catching up on Twitter, listening to music, browsing the web, you should be able to get around 9 to 10 hours with intense usage, which is around the same time as the iPad Air, including the fact that the iPad mini has a smaller battery. However, if we're just using it occasionally to do these tasks, you should be able to get around 3 days before having to charge it again. However, with the more intense apps such as Infinity Blade 3 and iMovie, you should be getting around 4 to 5 hours on intense usage, and if you're just playing occasionally, you may find yourself having to charge the iPad mini every 2 days. Overall, the big question is, should you get the iPad mini with Retina Display? As simple as it sounds, it really depends on personal preference. The iPad mini with Retina Display starts off at $399 for the 16GB Wi-Fi only model and $529 for the 16GB Wi-Fi and LTE model. On the other hand, the iPad Air starts off at $499 for the 16GB Wi-Fi only model and $629 for the 16GB Wi-Fi and LTE model. In my opinion, the iPad Air is a device that is more for people who are looking for a tablet that could act as a substitute for their current computer. It's a big enough display for most tasks, a full-size keyboard, and it has apps such as Evernote, Pages, Numbers, Keynote, GarageBand, etc. However, the iPad mini is devised for people that want a tablet to complement their current computer. Its mini form factor is perfect for daily tasks such as browsing the web, reading books, but is definitely not ideal for more powerful tasks such as editing a movie with iMovie. Most people would prefer a bigger display for that sort of processing. iOS 7 is also a great operating system to use, and the App Store has over 1 billion apps, which is a big advantage over the Android operating system. But if you're coming from an older version of an iPad or the iPad mini, well, if you're coming from the iPad 1, 2, or 3 and want to retain the same size, definitely upgrade to the iPad Air. Its processor improvements would make iOS 7 a much better operating system to use, and for some, the gorgeous Retina display would be a pleasure to see and use. However, if you want the smaller form factor, definitely upgrade to the iPad mini with Retina display. It's all the latest and greatest technology from Apple and will have the same benefits as the iPad Air can provide on a smaller form factor. If you're coming from the iPad 4, then no, I would say do not even consider upgrading to either the iPad Air or the iPad mini with Retina display. The speed improvements will be negligible as iOS 7 already runs smoothly on the iPad 4. Wait for next year's models that will come with better features such as the fingerprint sensor. If you own last year's iPad mini, you should definitely upgrade to the iPad mini with Retina display. The Retina display is a reason enough because it makes everything you see just extremely crisp. The processor has also been upgraded to 2 generations on the A5 to the A7. As a result, you will definitely notice a major improvement in terms of speed and efficiency. You may also want to consider upgrading to the bigger size iPad Air because of the larger display, and it comes with the same specs as the iPad mini for only $100 more. So there you have it, my full review of the iPad mini with Retina display. Sorry it took so long. I lost schoolwork during the semester and I wanted to make this review as complete as possible and help your buying decisions. Anyway guys, thanks for watching my review, and as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and comment your thoughts on the iPad mini, and I'll see you guys next time.